All right, so there are a lot of similarities between lists and strings because, like, similar to strings, we have these elements that have a position and a value, right? And so obviously we can do indexing just like we did with strings. Let me just try with this list that I created of fruits, names of fruits. And let me just try to access the very first element. So similar to what I did with strings, I can do the same here. S at position 0 is the first element, right? So it returns the first element. Let me try some other variations. For example, 3. 3 should be 0, 1, 2, 3. Banana should be the third element, right? And similar to what we did with strings, I can do -1. So when we start counting backwards, we begin with -1, remember? So I can do that, which was pretty similar to saying the length of the list -1, right? So we are going to look at the functions as well, but this is indexing. That means we can access every element in a list using indexing. Similar to strings, we can do slicing as well, and the same rules apply here. The slicing operator works in exactly the same way as we did with strings. So I can begin with some element, let's say 1, and let's say I want like peach, apple, and I don't want any other element. So I should be stopping at banana, which is like one more than the index of apple. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So I should stop at 3 because I don't want to include 3. And let's run this. So I get another list with the values that I want. Now notice this is important that I get another list, right? Okay. And then of course I can do the thing that we did earlier, that you can also manipulate the step size. So that means, like, let's say I want to start from the first element and then keep skipping one element. And so I can do that, right? So this is the slicing operator. The other thing is the concatenation operator. Let me create another list. For example, it's a numeric list, and then another list, L2 equals, let's assume that has like string type elements like A and then B. Okay, and let me use a concatenation operator, which was the plus sign, remember? So it's similar to that here as well, just like L1 plus L2. What this is going to do is it's going to place these elements next to one another and create a new list. So if I just like run this, notice what happens. It's exactly in the same order, 2, 3, 4, and then AB. Okay, so all of this seems pretty similar to strings. However, there's one major difference between lists and strings. So going back to this list S, right? So let's say I'm accessing the very first element, S0, right? And I'm trying to update it. So instead of pair, let's say I wanted to enter something else here. Let's say berries. So let me try doing that here. And let me also create another, let's say, string, which is S2. And this is like hello, right? And I also want to update the element here, S2, the first element, which is like H. And instead of H, let's say I want to say something else, which is, let's say, S0 equals updated with, let's say, G, right? And let me just go and print S, right, because I've updated that. And let me print S2, right? Or let's do this. Let me just like comment it for the time being. Let's focus on our list, right? So let's focus only on the list, and then we'll come back to strings. So if I do something like this, okay, so it has slowed down as expected. Okay, let's run it again. Right, so you can see that this list is updated. So I can go and actually access an element and update it. And I updated it with like berries. Now let me try, because there's a lot of similarity between strings and lists. Let me try doing the same with this string, right? And let's like comment this out. We already did all this, so there is no need to do this. Let's like focus on this string and then just like run it. And I get this error that str object does not support item assignment, which means that there is this concept of immutability in strings. You cannot update specific elements in strings, which you can do in lists. So that makes lists really powerful, because if we have a list, we can go and access an element and update it. That's not possible in strings, and that is the fundamental difference between strings and lists. Otherwise, there is a lot of similarity, as we just saw in terms of functions. And in fact, there are more functions that make them more similar. For example, the len function. If I just go ahead and say print len of s, similar to strings, it is going to return the number of elements in my string. Okay, we need to get rid of this, right? Because this is not possible. So let's run this, right? So there are 5 elements. And in addition to that, there are 2 more very useful functions, and they are usually used with I would say numeric lists. So let me show you those as well, and they are very useful because sometimes like we need to find what is the maximum value in a given list. For example, this one, what is the maximum value? We know that this is 9, and I can like just go ahead and do something like max of L, right? And it's going to return like what's the maximum value, and 9 is the maximum value, right? And you can also do something like min. So min of L is 0, so this should return a 0. All right, so that's all about lists and some important similarities and differences between strings and lists. In the next video, we're going to talk about some list methods.